Talk with Mike Zuzolo.
Chad Moyer with you here on the Rural Radio Network. Time for a midday market update and a little bit of analysis with Mike Zuzolo, Global Commodity Analytics. Well, Mike, earlier this hour we had the WASDE that came out. We also had another trade headline hit. Let's start with the WASDE. First of all, on grains, were there any surprising numbers in the WASDE? Kind of take us through it.
Yeah, the surprise was the USDA did not change anything in South America, whether it was Argentine corn and Brazilian corn or Argentine beans or Brazil beans, Chad. That was probably the biggest surprise that I think the trade was expecting some movement one way or the other in terms of bigger or smaller crop sizes, given their harvest progress in soybeans especially. The other probably bigger surprise, and that kind of dovetails with what I just said, is the idea that we did see the ending stocks globally for beans go up to 122.5 million metric tons. That's towards the top end of the trading range. And so when you look at soybeans, both domestically and globally, contrast those with corn domestically and globally, I would say that corn got the better shot in terms of a sub 1.5 billion bushel carryover domestically, and that then took the global ending stocks down below 288 million metric tons, and that was below the average trade guess, kind of towards the low end of the range. So the trade had been buying beans and selling corn, maybe because of the export sales, maybe because they believe a deal's going to get done with Asia. This report kind of flies in the face of that, so we'll have to watch that spread real closely.
Okay. And then, Mike, I mentioned there was another trade headline that has to do with China. What was that headline? And was there any reaction to that today?
Yeah, we've seen a mixed reaction. China is expected now to be up to 145% tariffs when you add everything on top of everything. And I think the trade had been thinking, I certainly been thinking after yesterday's announcement, it was going to be 125% on China. So it's another 20%, and it's, as one of the loyal rural radio listeners called me a few minutes ago and said to me, he goes, what's it matter if it's 50 or 500%? And I think that's generally a very good point, because you are talking about we're not going to move the needle by doing what we're doing right now between the two countries. I think what we're doing at this point is saying, if you're not going to move, we're just going to keep ratcheting up the tariffs. And so, we're going to isolate you economically and deal with your Asian neighbors. And so that's the issue that we're fighting right now. We can talk more about during the channel Final Bell.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit on that later. In the meantime, since this has been such a driven by money flow and fund buying and selling, is there anything else going on in today's markets that we should be keeping an eye on through the end of the day today?
Yeah, I think you bring up a huge point, the cash versus the futures market, and we see once again the livestock market following Wall Street lower, while the cash market in cattle, especially feeders, remains very sharp and pointed and higher. So I'd say watch that all the way through the end of the week, whether it's unleaded gas at the pump or unleaded at the futures. We're building some pretty big premiums in the cash market versus the break in the futures market.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, that's Mike Zuzolo, Global Commodity Analytics. You can get a 2-week free trial of his newsletter when you go to his website, globalcomresearch.com, globalcom with 2 M's, research.com. Just mention in their Rural Radio Network and you get that 2-week free trial. Do remember, trading of commodity futures and options does involve substantial risk of loss, might not be suitable for all investors. I'm Chad Moyer on the Rural Radio Network.